Hey, what's going on, everyone? Just want to share the 8 books that I finished in the month of July. And it's kind of weird because I finished three different fiction books, which I think is a record for me in the past 5 years, something along those lines. So let's just go ahead, get right into it. Probably my favorite one, and it's A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. This is one of those New York Review books. I picked a bunch of them up at the end of last year, and I read a couple. And I remembered, might as well get going. For some reason, I had an inspiration to read some fiction, and I can't remember who. I don't know. I can't remember if it was John over at Nicholas Vachacourt's channel that recommended this one in particular to me. If not, then still check out his channel. Anyways, he's got great book reviews. But anyways, this is just a lovely short. It just hit the spot. When I hadn't read a fiction book for 3 or 4 months, I just wanted something really good, really hard hitting, and it did. So the premise here is an art restorer after World War One picks up a job out in the countryside, the English countryside, and he kind of just chips away at his work, kind of does a little bit of reflecting, gets on with the local inhabitants and stuff, and that kind of thing. And it's kind of him looking back on it years later, how this was kind of a period of restoration, just he's kind of restoring the painting and everything in the church's bell tower. It's a period of like I said, restoration and renewal for him. Even though there's a lot of what could there have been, that he didn't act upon and that kind of thing. But just so well done. I probably did it basically no justice. But if you like literary fiction kind of stuff, definitely check this one out. It was so good. All right. So let's move on to some history books. I read Magna Carta, The Birth of Liberty by Dan Jones. And this kind of confirmed my assumption, even though it's kind of supposed to be about how, everyone kind of thinks Magna Carta was, the greatest watershed ever in the history of Western democracy and all that kind of thing. The book kind of shows maybe, sort of, kind of, wink, wink, but really, it didn't do a whole lot, in the big scheme of things for the first couple hundred years. There's a lot more, historiography that we've kind of embedded, onto it and whatnot. But for those who don't know, Magna Carta is sort of the document that King John signs, kind of in distress at the hands of his barons, after, screwing up a lot, and his father screwing up a lot, and his grandfather kind of taking advantage of the aristocracy of England. And, the aristocracy, they wanted to do the exploiting themselves rather than be exploited and everything like that. But, a couple months after Magna Carta is signed, under duress, the Pope, King John basically go, hey, yeah, that doesn't count. It wasn't fair, blah, blah, blah. And everything like that. So, anyways, like I said, it kind of goes into the history leading up to that, how it was kind of a lot of personal stuff dealing with King John and the prior 2 kings and how they were kind of taking advantage of the nobility. So that's why there's a lot of kind of really specific, odd, goofy clauses in Magna Carta. But like I said, you do learn kind of the context, kind of what happened afterwards, and why it actually still is important to some degree. It isn't just a complete write-off, as much as I'd like to say it is. But anyways, it was pretty enlightening. Not my favorite of Dan Jones's book, but they're all pretty good. So it's kind of a, like I said, it's a pretty high bar to top his best stuff. All right, then I also read David Attenborough's Ocean, Earth / Wilderness by, obviously, Attenborough and Colin Butfield. And I will, not gonna lie, I did splurge on this one. Listen to the audiobook as I read it. There is a bunch of different illustrations and photographs and stuff. There are some plates and things in there, which is really, really nice. It was kind of different. Some chapters are narrated by Attenborough and some are narrated by Butfield. Definitely check out the accompanying documentary. It's pretty well done as well. So I thoroughly enjoyed this kind of stuff. Nature documentaries are just I'd say that's half my diet of watching TV is basically nature documentaries. So like I said, I did enjoy it. I did try to. I think I did read it before I watched the documentary, I believe. A big emphasis. Now it's kind of blurring in my head, but a big emphasis is on deep water and shallow water dredging, where the sea floor is dredged up with trawlers and that kind of thing. That's kind of a big thing kind of going on, especially in the deeper ocean where they're considering doing it for rare earth minerals and that sort of stuff. So and what kind of damage that can wreak on the ecology down there. And speaking of ecology, for a depressing book, we got They Poisoned the World, Life and Death in the Age of Forever Chemicals by Mariah Blake. And this is a journalistic investigation on PFAS and PFOS chemicals, and how a bunch of different really big companies, that especially in like factory towns, such as the one that they profile in this one in upstate New York, where a lot of these chemicals, they're forever chemicals because there's not really a natural remedy to break them down in the environment. They can really only be taken apart in a laboratory setting. So once they're out there, they're kind of out there forever and ever and ever. And once they start, accumulating in the water system, in the water reservoirs, into the soil and everything, they kind of just leach into people. And there's studies showing how they had to go far and wide just to find a single person on the planet that wasn't kind of imbued with some of these PFAS chemicals. So, anyways, like I said, some of these companies, Monsanto, of Roundup fame, or infamy, I should say, 3M, a couple of these bigger companies had knowledge about them, but kind of try to suppress it, kind of keep it buried, in the slush pile for literal decades sometimes. But how some of these towns that had these factories in it, when the water systems became breached with these chemicals, how rates of different kinds of rare cancers and stuff skyrocketed, and how kind of the turmoil of trying to combat these companies, how much that can take out of individuals that tried to do so. There is some success for it. A lot of settlements are made and that sort of thing, but just kind of a depressing read, but I feel like something people should be kind of learning and reading about as well. I do have 2 books that I checked out from my library here. Let's see. One was Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, which is actually really, really good. I was kind of wasn't really 100% sure what I was getting into. I know Naomi Klein a little bit from her environmental kind of writings and that sort of stuff. But this book is, I don't even know how you call it, an expose of how she, I guess, in her professional and personal life, is mistaken for Naomi Wolf, often, apparently, over, literally the past, 20 years or something like that. And how that kind of occurs. Naomi Wolf, for those who don't know, is, used to be kind of, a feminist author who then became kind of, a huge conspiracy theorist kind of person, and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, it kind of just shows how the different, circumstances, different upbringings, different, I guess, things that have happened to maybe both of them that kind of, led them to, split off, even though people, kind of misidentify them as each other and whatnot. It was very interesting. There was a lot of tangents, and there was a lot of, winding paths on just, the history of, doppelgangers in, literature. Different little memoir vignettes of both their lives and stuff. It was very, I don't know, it was good, but it was just I don't even know how to classify it. So I think that's kind of a good thing. So there was that one, and then I read another fiction book. This one is I'm trying to read maybe one-ish YA book a month now. Just I feel like being the librarian, the library director, I feel like I should have some recommendations for up to date or kind of current-ish, kind of middle school and high school and YA books and that kind of stuff, even though it's not really hugely my thing. That doesn't even, oh geez, this sounds like Big League. Oh no. Anyways, this one was The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. I'm not gonna lie, I picked this one up because I was just looking for a standalone. I didn't want a giant series, because there are a lot of kids that don't want, it's weird, a lot of them want series, and then there's a few that are no, I don't want a series, I just want one book. So this one was a standalone, and it's all about, I did enjoy it. I picked it up because of the cover and stuff, and it felt very vibey, and it was really vibey. The whole premise of the book is, I think it's South Korean mythology inspired. The main character, kind of, this isn't really spoilers, in the first chapter, takes the place, sorta, for a sacrifice to the sea god. She kind of, falls beneath the sea into the realm of spirits and whatnot. And it's kind of her adventure on fixing the problems and why there has to be a sacrifice to the sea god and waking him up and all that kind of stuff. And it was vibey. Like I said, YA is just not really my thing, but I probably would have liked this 10 years ago. So anyways, there's that one. And then, let's see, I got one philosophy book, Continental Philosophy by Simon Critchley. This was the philosophy group read, which I'm ashamed to say I didn't participate in because I didn't do anything in the month of July. And this is kind of showing how Continental Philosophy really branched away from, I guess, analytic philosophy and continental philosophy branching away from each other in the early 20th century. A big thrust of the book is kind of dealing with obscurantism and scientism. And I've read those like references before, or terms a little bit before, and I think it did a good job kind of explaining that. And you get a lot of kind of the history of like kind of who the main, I guess, characters were, and the main like each like kind of generation, what the big kind of to do was that kind of kept like putting a wedge between them, between like the Anglosphere and like everyone else effectively. And then lastly, one more fiction book, and it was the classic Émile Zola's The Kill, which was the second book in the Rougon-Macquart cycle. And this one is all about how Paris during the Second Empire in the 1850s and 1860s in Paris, lots of different like landlords are taken over, and like construction and modernization is taken over, taking place, and how a lot of corners are cut, a lot of unscrupulous kind of decisions are made, and kind of just like the lust for like climbing the ladder to get to the top of like kind of like, this just like river of gold like flowing through the city and whatnot. But also at the same time, the lust for like people as well. I mean, just like read the blurb, dealing with it, because I tell people that, and I tell them what I'm reading, and they were like, wow, and he's the librarian, and he's, like, reading this, like, nonsense. Anyways, the main character is Saccard, and he's married to Maxine, and he has, they adopt, Renee, and, anyways, let me just I got Renee Maxine screwed up somehow. Oh my gosh, let's see. The Kill is the second volume in Zola's great cycle of 20 novels, The Rougon-Macquart, and the first to establish Paris, the capital of modernity, as the center of Zola's narrative world, conceived as a representation of the uncontrollable appetites unleashed by the Second Empire and the transformation of the city by Baron Haussmann. The novel combines into a single powerful vision the twin themes of lust for money and lust for pleasure. The all-pervading promiscuity of the new Paris is reflected in the dissolute and frenetic lives of an unscrupulous property speculator, Saccard, and his neurotic wife, Renee, and her dandified lover, Saccard's sons, Maxime. So it sounds exactly like how you think it would kind of play out. So I really enjoy Zola's like writing style. It's very like earthy, if that makes a lot of sense. And I think he started like the naturalistic school in like French literature in like the mid to late 1800s and stuff. But I just really enjoy it for whatever reason. So I kind of plan on reading the 20-book cycle eventually. I don't know how long it's gonna take, but it'll probably take a while. And then Soph has to make her little appearance here at the last second. But anyways, those were the books that I finished in the month of July. Let me know what your favorite book was, and always remember, whatever you end up reading this month, read victoriously.